Yes. Shall we move on to The White Ribbon?
Das Weiße Band, eine deutsche Kindergeschichte. The White Ribbon, a German children's story literally, or simply The White Ribbon, takes its name from ideas found in late 19th century books on education and morality on which the film is based. In particular, the idea that a white ribbon, white being the colour of purity, tied around the arm of a misbehaving or morally delinquent child would promote feelings of purity and goodness and correct their waywardness, as well as marking them out to others. Set in a small German village between mid-1913 and the outbreak of war in mid-1914, The White Ribbon begins with a voiceover from the older version of the village's school teacher, Christian Friedel, seen here as a young German Benny Hill, as he tells of the events that occurred in the village over that period, and that he thinks helps to clarify some things that happened in this country, as none of the events, not even the behaviour and, well, character of the characters, can have any impact on that war, and that Haneke has described the film as being about the roots of evil. You'll realise, I'm sure, that it's what happened to Germany after World War I that the older teacher is referencing. Though, despite the fascists present, it could be applied to any authoritarian society, and all of the hypocrisies it displays likewise. The village's doctor is severely injured when he falls from his horse returning from his daily ride. The cause of this fall is found to be a wire tied around the base of two trees across his regular route. Soon thereafter, a woman dies in an accident at the sawmill. In fact, the doctor's accident is largely put out of mind. But is there a relation between the two events? A number of other mysterious events occur, including fires and the severe beatings of two children. Perhaps it is Martin, the haunted and troubled-looking son of Burkhard Klausner's puritanical local pastor, who we observe walking precariously over a drop, and who tells the teacher that he gave God a chance to kill him. But maybe that's simply because he's an adolescent boy with the attendant urges, and his father is the sort of terrible person who would try to dissuade his child from these urges by telling him cautionary tales about a boy of the same age who wanked himself to death. No, really.
Yes, literally.
Wanked himself to death. Victorians were super weird. A number of vignettes cover the rest of the year up until the outbreak of war, giving a slice of life of this small village, and, one imagines, other rural German settlements in the early years of the 20th century, in which we observe the casual cruelty of the respected doctor to his lover, and the much more personal cruelty to his daughter whom he is abusing. The entirely typical lack of love and empathy displayed by a man whose teachings in religion are based on someone extolling the virtues of love and empathy, apparent death by suicide, marital breakdown, and the school teacher's courting of the Baroness's nanny. It's not all bleak and terrible, just mostly. I have seen The White Ribbon described as too simplistic, the suggestion being naively so, and that it unsatisfyingly suggests everyone is to blame for the evils in which the film foreshadows. This is nonsensical criticism. Of course it doesn't explain the rise of fascism. It's a 2.5-hour film. It's barely possible to adequately explain anything in that time, let alone how one of the world's most technologically and culturally advanced nations could incubate and then birth one of the most poisonous and harmful ideologies in human history. What it does do, in my opinion, is portray and highlight some of the everyday, mundane evils that, left unchecked or unmodified, lead to greater evils and harm, applicable to any ideology that creates fear of the other and encourages or even demands unthinking obedience, not simply fascism, and question what we will give up for security or stability, whether that be financial or civil, and what we are willing to turn a blind eye to achieve that. It's not an entirely successful film. While I'll mention later a bit of Michael Haneke's filmmaking philosophy and his disdain for neatness, sometimes a little neatness might be nice. Throughout The White Ribbon is the question of who's responsible for the mysterious accidents and cruel assaults. The strong suggestion is that it's the children of the village, led by the pastor's daughter Clara, to whom the other children seem subservient, punishing others for not playing along or for being different. But it's never explicitly confirmed. And that might be fine if the rest of the film's narrative was largely reducible to some mostly unrelated stuff that happened. But that's a minor complaint and certainly doesn't much detract from the film's power, nor its stark, cold beauty, shot by Haneke's regular cinematographer Christian Berger. It's uncompromising, riveting and rewarding, if incredibly cynical.
Yeah, I don't know. The White Ribbon didn't do a lot for me. This kind of is a poster child for my main. It might not even be a criticism, it's more observation of Hannigan's work. Like, he will frequently preserve up a smorgasbord of human misery and invite you to chew over whichever parts you feel like you might be interested in, and then come up with your own thoughts on the matter. And there's some moods where I would welcome that trust, but the mood that I was watching this in, I felt a little bit annoyed at having to guide myself through the complexities of the human experience, and a little bit frustrated at Haneke's abrogation of a basic point of the work to mull over. It feels like just a list of bad things that happened for a few years, and then that's it. It's like, here's just some bad things that happened. Isn't it bad? Yes, it's bad. I think we can all agree that the bad things are bad and they shouldn't be happening. But other than that, it's hard for me to get an awful lot of a point out of it. I didn't really see what he was trying to say, if anything, about it. And I think that's probably the point, is that there wasn't really any point to it. I wanted to like this more because it's such a bloody beautiful film. The cinematography is absolutely astounding. It just looks like a beautiful film. I suppose the other thing that struck me is it's weird that this is 1913, because it feels a lot like it was 1813 or 1713 or 1613. So it's a very strange society to build. I mean, assuming this is in any way accurate, which I think I can probably buy.
It is supposed to be. Certainly, I'm not sure about the setting. They based it a lot on photographs of the time, which is why it looks like it does. That's the cinematography is meant to mirror those photographs they had. But certainly, the philosophies and stuff and all the things that are in it are from books from that time that Haneke had researched and was researching for like a decade before he even managed to get funding for it.
Yeah, but other than Puritans be weird, I'm not sure there's an awful lot of. There wasn't an awful lot to gain from this. I'm not sure what I could meaningfully take from this and apply to my own life or anything like that. It feels like something that should have had some kind of guiding presence to it, which is annoying when it has a narrator that kind of implies that it might have something that was going to reach that, and then it just doesn't, because it gets to the end, it's like, well, better go off and have a war now. See ya. And we never came back to the village at all. It's like, okay, so cool story, bro. That's kind of my real issue with the White Ribbon, is that I felt like I should have got something from it and I didn't, and that's not something I'd say with a lot of the other Haneke films. Certainly, everything else remains really great. There's tons of great performances in it, so really great ensemble performance. As I said, it looks absolutely fantastic. Just some stunning cinematography there. I mean, I'm definitely shallow enough to recommend it on that basis alone, but it's one of his least powerful works for me, on the basis that I just couldn't really get my teeth into it in terms of what it's actually trying to say or do. It just wound up being a list of miseries that happened, and I couldn't apply a lot more to it than that, which is a bit of a shame. But still, certainly something I would recommend if you're in the mood for it. If you want to see this thing, it's certainly a really beautiful and well acted film. The production value is absolutely impeccable. So yes, it's worth a look on that basis. It's worth a look on a kind of almost historical document kind of basis. Really good, because it's certainly not something that a huge amount of knowledge about the kind of immediately pre-World War I Germanic rural culture. So it's certainly good to see it on that basis as well. So yeah, there are certainly a lot of things to recommend in it, but essentially I just didn't feel like I didn't get a lot from it on a kind of more intellectual level, which I was kind of expecting.
I really, really did. This is one of the three that I really, really like to set above the others, although it's not the one that I thought was better than Cachet. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really did get a lot from it. I thought, it doesn't give any easy answers of anything. I kind of got that it was suggesting that there was some sort of rot set into society, just not quite the kind of Hannah Arendt mundanity of evil stuff, but kind of heading towards that. And just like the general hypocrisies of the church and kind of the authoritarianism of that society. Although it kind of struck me that a lot of it didn't seem like it was that different from, say, Britain at the same time.
I very much doubt it would be different from any point between, today and the invention of religion.
Yes.
It did not seem to be in any way specific to pre-war or explaining anything about what that could have led to the war. And for me, it just felt like the dark sides of human nature that has been there since there's been humans. I don't think there was anything specific to it, for me at least.
No, I mean, again, I think the film also sets you up to think that it's about World War One, which it clearly isn't. It's about World War Two, the rise of National Socialism. Because World War One is, I mean, to be reductive about it, but largely about a bunch of aristocrats and royals being pissed off at each other, and then ruining the continent as a result. Whereas, because as unpleasant as it is to think that Hitler was elected, and then in so many other ways, the regular person bore responsibility for it in a way that wasn't the case with World War One.
Yeah.
And I just think that it suggests there's some seeds there of just, it's kind of that authoritarianism and hypocrisy. And obviously I got more of it than you did. It certainly gave me a lot to think about, although, sometimes I would just like a wee bit more kind of...
I would like a guide. I would like a starter for 10. I would like at least the hint of a question in the first place, rather than having to come up with all my own stuff.
Yourself.
I've got things to do. I'm busy. I'm not, but I could be. So,
Yes. Yeah, I get you there. That you kind of you don't want to have to do all of the work yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, it's a period that I don't know much about. Pre-World War One Germany, so it was interesting from that point of view, at least, and with all the other stuff I've said as well. And you said that it's hard to place it at the time, Scott. You couldn't really tell that was early 20th century. And I actually think there's probably quite a lot of Europe who's like that, because it's hard to imagine, really, compared to the rest of all of history, quite how fast progress was in the 20th century.
Yeah.
Because World War One started with people on horseback.
Yeah.
And ended with tanks.
Yeah.
It's really kind of hard to grasp how that quickly that changed. And having grown up in the 20th century, we're so used to that pace of change. Whereas, for 400 years, things didn't change all that much. Mm-hmm. Factories come along and railways and stuff, but still, compared to the pace of change of the 20th century, it's so different. So yet, it probably didn't look all that different from 200 years before that.
Yeah.
With the exception of that steam engine that was being used for the threshing.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting setting. I really found it a very rewarding film, and it is very beautiful. So yeah, it's a high recommendation for me.